Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever time it is. You are about to join the extravaganza known as the Steelers Hangover, brought to you by BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Friends, my name is Bryan Anthony Davis. Along with me is my good friend Tony Defeo. Both of us are from BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and we are so glad to be with you today because the hangover's not as bad. This isn't one of those face down 24 hours after the fact where you just you regret everything you've done in your life, especially the last 24 hours. This is one when you wake up and you go, whoa, I think I survived. I think I had a good time, but hey, I'm winning, so that's a good thing after the Steelers' 26-24 victory over the Indianapolis Colts at Heinz Field yesterday. I am still elated. Tony Defeo, what is up?
Hey, Bryan, happy Monday. What is up? And it's definitely my favorite win they've had this year, and definitely the most satisfying and definitely the most important, I think.
Yeah, you are not kidding because, we looked back after that Baltimore Raven game, and we'll talk about them in a few minutes. But after that Ravens game, they were 1-4. It just looked like complete disaster. Now, it's still kind of disaster in the AFC North, and that's something we're going to talk about. But there's a different path that has opened up now for the Steelers that did not seem possible before, and we'll talk about that as well. But first, before we do anything, Tony, can you tell me what was that score again yesterday?
6-24 good guys.
Okay, what is significant about that score, Tony? For me, this is something that I don't get to do very often because 9 times out of 10, I'm wrong on everything. But I predicted that the final score would be 26-24 Steelers on multiple channels of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. I did it on the podcast the other night with Dave and with Jeff, and I did it also on the Steeler Burning Question on Saturday, as well as Bold and Bizarre predictions. I am never right on this, and I got a message from Dave Schofield with 6 minutes left. He goes, "Oh no, the score is 26-24. If this holds up, oh no," because he knows that I'll be just singing it to the moon, and I really am. Look, it was just a wild guess. I was screwing around, actually. I thought 26-24 is not your ordinary score. Everybody does the typical 27-21, 28-21, but weird things happen in football, and we know with the Steelers, and especially with this Colts defense, that you're going to deal with a lot of Chris Boswell field goals. And thank goodness for Boz. Wow, he looked great yesterday, didn't he, Tony?
He looked fantastic. He looked like 2017 Boz, and they surely needed him because their red zone offense was lacking. But hey, whatever, and heroes.
Well, we are having a little bit of a weird connection with you, Tony. So we'll try to get that corrected, but we'll keep going. So as far as everything goes, you look at that Steeler game yesterday, and you can think many things coming out of that. And I just lost Tony, but I'm sure he will be back. It sounds like he was having some internet problems, so I'll keep this going. So when you go ahead and look at this game yesterday, they came out throwing, they came out looking pretty good. Then all of a sudden, Mason Rudolph throws an interception. Now, look, we could go ahead and make excuses for Mason Rudolph, like I will, and I won't. I'll do a little bit of both on that. Yesterday, that was a Juju Smith-Schuster drop. I really don't think that ball should have been intercepted. Now, I think James Washington bailed Mason Rudolph out of an interception when he caught a beautiful ball that was thrown behind him almost one-handed, and he brought it back in. It was, I have to do the motions for you too. So this is an interactive show. So, with that being said, he helped him out there. the running game was not getting going, but where Jay Sam was so beneficial for that team was as a receiver with 13 catches. So really, you know what? As far as everything goes, they're trying to get the ball moving on offense. It's just still, once something is fixed, then it kind of reverts back. We're trying to get everything perfect. But as Wes Hickok says on here, that was a perfect pass, and I thought it was a really good ball that Mason Rudolph threw. Was he sterling the entire game? No. In fact, they had so many opportunities in the red zone where they could only pick up those 12 points on field goals. So that's kind of something that you're really trying to go ahead and pick yourself up from. But here's the deal when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers this season. Defense is bailing that team out. Now, the defense was not an A-plus defense yesterday. They were dealing with a team that had arguably one of the best rushers in the league. That's fine to say, but they were dealing with not a team with a caliber of a top caliber wide receiver, with T.Y. Hilton being out. Jacoby Brissett was out. He basically only played a quarter, maybe a little more than a quarter. But as far as that, Brian Hoyer came in and became the first ever quarterback since 1970 to come in relief and throw 3 touchdown passes, which I think is absolutely that's crazy. You would have thought that would have happened. But what's happening, though, despite all of this, despite the defense not being great, even though the defense did bail them out, thank you, Minkah Fitzpatrick. That was fantastic. 4 interceptions so far for 4 horsemen. I mean, if Tony was on here, that's only 3. There's my 4. Tony would love that because we compare ourselves to Ric Flair and Arn Anderson all the time as the BTSC heels. But you know what? Despite all that, this team is finding ways to win. You could call it lucky. You could call it what you want. But what it is, it's a team figuring out who they are, and it's a team that is bonded with each other. This is really a band of brothers team. We talked about this the entire preseason, even before Ben Roethlisberger went out in week 2, that this is a team that has been bonded by all of the problems that they had in the offseason. So right now, things are happening with this team. I'm glad the defense is bailing them out. I'm glad Cam Hayward, Jess George just puts this on the live chat. Cam pushing their best lineman into their QB is a pretty big deal too. They really played well against a top caliber offensive line, one of the best offensive lines out there. So they really did well with that. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, I mean, he was not perfect throughout this game as well, but he was perfect when he needed them to be, because that is a huge 14-point swing when he takes that ball 96 yards, the 3rd longest interception return in Steeler history, and that was a huge deal. And when that happened, you kind of thought you were going to be okay. So welcoming us back is the Arn Anderson / Tolly Blanchard Snowman, I gotcha, of BTSC, Tony Defeo.
How's my connection now?
You're lagging a little bit, but you're there. So
okay.
there is a little bit of a lag, but we are.
I'm like Paul Roma,
I know
then.
Internet problems. Paul Roma, that's a 4 horseman. I mean, gosh, there's Steve.
That 4.
Roma was a horseman, wasn't he? Okay, still having a little bit of a problem with. There he is. So with that being said, Tony, what we were talking about here was just the fact that this team isn't perfect, and they're relying on a little bit of luck. It is not a game that you're going to be saying that this is the game that you hang on the wall as being a signature game, but it was a win that they needed, not just because of the situation with the situation that's happening in the standing. They needed to have a win when things went wrong and things went even more wrong for the other team. And that's kind of what happened yesterday. You usually don't see teams against the Steelers go ahead and flub the an extra point. You don't see him go ahead and miss a 2-point conversion in that situation. You don't see him miss a field goal, especially with a Hall of Famer. So with that, Tony, what are you thinking as far as the Steelers? What is it about this team that has us still hopeful?
Well, I think that they're learning to rely on the entire team, all three phases, not just Ben Roethlisberger and Bell like they had for the few defenses becoming the better part. They are the stronger part of the team. I think they and it did yesterday for almost the entire game. I mean, they had trouble moving the ball, but the defense kept them in it and opportunities. Minka Fitzpatrick did it all himself in that 96-yard turn for a touchdown. So I think that's what it is. It's a total team effort now. They're rallying around the fact that they've lost so much, that they've lost their raising to die. They're refusing to let the 29th season go down the drain like so many other teams.
Well, you know what? That's a good assessment. For me, Tony, I love the fact that the team's not perfect, but they're finding ways to win, finding ways to survive. But here's the question: can that hold up? When is getting lucky not good enough?
Well, I don't think you have to eventually find a way to have a much more efficient offense. And I mean, we can talk about scheming all day long. I think we've been talking about that for weeks, but I think it comes down to the fact that these players are either not as talented as the ones that were here before, or they're just really inexperienced. They need time to gel as an offense next year. So is it sustainable? Through 8 games, it looks like they have the defense to keep them in just about every game. But, if their offense doesn't become more efficient, then I'm not sure much beyond maybe a hopeful wild card spot.
Tony Defeo, is Mason Rudolph the next starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2020?
In 2020, or no, I think he's coming back next year.
But do you think that okay, let me rephrase that. Is he the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger, or do they need to look elsewhere?
Well, I think the jury's still out on that. I haven't seen enough of him yet for him to say that he is, in fact, he's for sure the heir apparent, but progressing. It's not quickly as I would like or the rest of like out there, but he's come in and he's not been a disaster, and I think that's a good place. And but I don't think it's time to give up on him just yet.
In the pantheon of best starting quarterbacks in Pittsburgh Steeler history, we know who number 1 is. We know who number 2 is. Some of you might flip-flop Ben Roethlisberger and Terry Bradshaw, and we're not having that conversation right now. But where is Mason Rudolph? If you ask me, number 3, this is not a popular opinion. I know I'm going to get roasted for this. Probably the 3rd best. And when I talk history, let's talk modern era, because I'm not talking Bobby Lane, because I don't know Bobby Lane. So let's talk 1969 and on, and who we know as starting quarterbacks for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would think number 3 would be Neil O'Donnell. Where would you think Mason Rudolph would stack up against a Neil O'Donnell in Pittsburgh Steeler lore? And let's leave his last game in Pittsburgh out of this.
Well, I mean, I think if he has that kind of, I think we would all be a tough act to follow. Any quarterback of that stature, of that the kind of career that he's had, and what he's given to this franchise, is going to be a tough act to follow. So if he can, if I've heard him compared to Neil, by a lot of people. So if then I'll, if you're asking me where he stacks up with Neil O'Donnell, again, I think it's too early to say. If he reaches that potential, then most people should be satisfied with that.
Yeah, okay. That's I appreciate that. We have Reginald Rivers, great commenter of the show, mentions that Cordell Stewart's number 3. We had someone throw in, and we've had a few throw in on Tommy Maddox as well. No one's thrown in Bubby, and pretty soon I'm going to put a Bubby poster. I actually have a Bubby poster. I think I'm going to put it behind the wall here. I think that would be good for my new studio, what I call my studio in my basement now. But you know what? I mean, what we forget, and the reason I brought that up, it was all by design. And if you go ahead and think about the fact that he started 5 NFL games now, and that's all he started, and we expect so much more out of a quarterback. And one of the reasons that we expect so much more out of any quarterback that's going to come in is, look what we've had the last 15 years. Since 2004, it's been Ben Roethlisberger. And now are we supposed to go ahead and just give anybody time because of what we saw with Ben Roethlisberger? And everybody's going to talk to you. Lance and Jeff brought this up yesterday, and they brought it up on the show that if you look back at Ben Roethlisberger 2004, he was a guy that was he was more of a game manager. It took him a while to become Ben Roethlisberger. If you look back, I was a big fan back in 1991, 92, when we were starting to see the emergence of Neil O'Donnell. His stat lines were a lot like, in fact, I think Mason Rudolph's stat lines were better. He was so much of a game manager, and so much of he barely cracked 200 yards back then, but they did have the running game to go with it, especially with Barry Foster helping them out. Some great names coming across. Tom Selleck, a.k.a. Mark Malone, Kent Graham. We got a Charlie Batch sighting. I love it. I'm still waiting for a Scott Campbell. I haven't seen a Scott Campbell come in there as well, or a Dennis Dixon, which I believe they both started games. Looks like we lost Tony again. He usually does not have internet issues. I used to be the guy that had internet issues. So we'll go ahead and but keep this party going. So the reason I bring that up is it took a long time from 1991 to 1994, 95 for O'Donnell to really have the great stats as far as he did. And he had very good stats. If you look at as far as accuracy and as far as yardage, he is considered number 3. Well, I mean, in stats, he's number 3 all time in Pittsburgh. So that's just something to bring up. If we go ahead and look at something, I'm gonna go ahead and bring up Wes's comment here. Wes, I would like to put an APB out on Wes because you're stealing my thunder, because this is what I was going to talk about next. Wes says, just an FYI for anyone who doesn't realize it, we are 7 in the playoff race in the AFC. I believe the team we would need to beat out for the spot is the Indianapolis Colts. So the title of the show is, what path do the Steelers need to go down to make the playoffs? First and foremost, before anybody chimes in with this, the Steelers have to win. I mean, they've got to win first. And it's not a given that they're going to win, but for this exercise, we've got to look at the fact that, yeah, they've got to win. And if they take care of business, what is going to go ahead And no problem, Wes. You're fine. You never have to say I'm sorry on the show. But what do they have to do to go ahead and make the playoffs? So look at it right now. Gosh, I was depressed last night watching a Baltimore and New England. And gosh, that was just an ugly game. And it's amazing how they can go ahead and just struggle against the Baltimore Ravens all the time. But here's the thing. John Harbaugh, you can hate the guy all you want. He is a fine football coach, and he's very good. He goes for the throat, and he really knew how to go ahead and match up against Bill Belichick and that team and confuse that team, because everybody knows that if you harass Tom Brady, and that's all they did was harass all night long, that they're going to be fine. And then you have the added wrinkle of a great defense in New England, but going ahead and not being able to go ahead and stop Lamar Jackson. So that's kind of depressing. Now, what I'm looking at, and we talked about it, I mean, there's still time. They can go ahead. They have a head-to-head against the Ravens. The Ravens do not have the easiest schedule. They have the Texans coming up. They have the 49ers coming up. They have some teams, but right now they kind of looked unbeatable. And so what we do is we can go ahead and kind of not lock them in, but we can go ahead and say maybe there's a better road to look at. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. And the reason I'm going to bring this up is you're right. I do foreshadow a lot looking down the road. The reason we don't spend more time talking about the next game is because that's what Thursday night's for, with the Steeler preview with Jeff Hartman, Dave Schofield, and myself. So I don't want to steal my thunder from then. So what I'm doing, this is kind of a different show where we're all over the board, and I'm kind of proud of that. So I do appreciate that, and I have no problem calling me out. I agree with you. We'll talk a little bit about the Rams, but not too much, because that's my Thursday night delight. How about that? And without Thursday night, you'd never get the prediction of 26-24 Steelers over Colts like that happened on that very show. So that is a reason to tune in on Tuesday night. Jav, man, you're not being critical at all. I love the fact that you chime in. That's what we do on this show. So thank you for bringing that up. But that's what we're going to go ahead and look at. And so actually what I'm going to do next, and I already had this planned, and I planned very little, as you know, but I actually have the schedules pulled up for the two most important teams to go ahead and look at, and it's the Indianapolis Colts and it's the Buffalo Bills. And so looking at that's probably the best avenue right now with how well the Baltimore Ravens are playing. Now, I'm not saying that the Ravens are just going to go ahead and keep going, and they're not going to win out. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. What I'm thinking, though, is that that's a pretty tough road, because that's 2.5 games. Because remember, you're 2 games behind in the standings, and you have the fact that you already lost to them too. So you're losing that tiebreaker now. You could get that tiebreaker back, especially in week 17. So that's something that you're going to have to look at. Wes brings up the fact that we're going to win in Buffalo if we can run the ball, and that offense is terrible. So let's take a look at Buffalo. That is a team that right now they're 6-2. The Steelers are 4-4. And that might be a pretty tough team to go ahead and beat. But think about this. They do have the Patriots once again. They do have some other tough teams coming up. They have the Baltimore Ravens to go ahead and play. So there are some very tough games. And I will go ahead and, of course, I had it pulled up. And just like anything, I can't really find it now. So here it is. Let's look at the Bills going forward. So it's 6-2 right now. Next week, they have the Browns. And this exercise that we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and try to predict their schedule going through. This is at Cleveland. So at Cleveland, that's tough. The Browns are playing terrible ball right now. That could be an upset, but I'm going to go ahead and call that a win for the Bills. So let's put them at 7-2. They play the Dolphins in Miami, 8-2. They play the Broncos. That's a weird game. So let's go ahead and give them a loss there, 8-3. On Thanksgiving, they play the Cowboys. Okay, so it's always tough to play Dallas on Thanksgiving. Let's give them a loss there, 8-4. The Ravens visit the Bills on 12-8. Right away, you could see them possibly being 8-6 at that point. You could see them. Then they have the Patriots. So I'm thinking, then they end with the Bills. With the Jets. I'm thinking that this could possibly be a 9-7 team. So there you go, right there. Now, let's look at the Indianapolis Colts, because that's a very interesting team as well. And when Wes brought up the fact that the Steelers were 7th, going into this game, they were 9th. But the 4 teams ahead of them were all in the AFC South. And they're going to go ahead and play each other a lot, which happened this weekend. You had the Jags and Texans play each other, kind of knocked the Jags down with the Steelers. The Steelers are now past them. Same with the Titans losing as well. So it should be very interesting. So the Colts, they are now, this was a 5-2 team. They're sitting at 5-3. They're a game ahead of the Steelers. And the funny thing about that is I think they are actually still considered the division winner right now. With the Houston Texans being the wild card team, but the Texans are really on a roll right now. And so you almost got to look at the fact that with the Texans that, that's a team that could probably win that division. They have some interesting games coming up ahead as well. But with the Dolphins, with the Colts going forward, they host the Dolphins next week. So we can go ahead. Let's give them a win at that, even though the Dolphins did win last week. But let's go ahead and put them at 6-3. They have the Jaguars again. They're going to host them. Let's give them the win there, 7-3. The Texans. Now, of course, this is just me talking. I could be really wrong. Look, I got lucky on the score, and I'm just going to say that. But I usually get a lot of this stuff wrong. So, Colts and Texans coming up on 11-21. Let's give them a loss there, 7-4. Titans come to town. We'll give them the win there, 8-4. The Buccaneers, they go to Tampa. Let's get crazy and give them a loss there. Then they play the Saints. Put them at 8-6. The Panthers, 9-6, and they end with the Jags. I would probably predict them at 10-6. So if Pittsburgh could go ahead and go 6-2 down the stretch, they're a 10-6 team. They would go ahead and win the tiebreaker over them. So there you go. That's just my prediction. But looking forward for the Steelers. The Steelers have the Browns twice. That Thursday night game that's coming up, 10 days from now. In fact, they have 2 more games in the next 10 days with the Rams coming up this week. That's kind of your true test. So I said we'd talk about that game a little bit. Rams are on the road. The Rams are not the same team that they were last year. Todd Gurley's not the same guy. And this is a much better Pittsburgh defense. But I see the Rams coming in a lot like this team in Indianapolis. In fact, I think they're very similar in a lot of ways. They do have a good offensive line. They have a very good defense. Now with adding Jalen Ramsey, that makes them even tougher. So, with that, that's going to be a tough game. They win this game, I could actually say, you go ahead and beat the Rams, then I'll say, all right, I'm confident now. Because that really puts you in a lot better spot as far as momentum goes. And Snowman says right here, Aaron Donald is a problem. Yeah, he is amazing, and he knows how to play. this is not a road game for Aaron Donald. He played a lot of games on this Heinz Field turf. But hopefully you get James Conner back. You just have a lot that I think this is going to be one of the games of the week. I really think that this is going to be just something special. So I can't wait to see this. Plus, this was said yesterday on the post game show with Lance and Jeff, and I found it very interesting. And they made a comment like, "Oh, whoa, the Ravens are wearing all black. It's the Ed Reed ceremony, the Hall of Fame ceremony." So I'm thinking about that. So what are the Steelers? The Steelers are wearing their 1979 throwbacks next week. So they're wearing the block numbers. You know they're bringing guys in to celebrate the 40th anniversary of that wonderful season. That place will be rocking. It's going to be a 425 game, probably a Tony Romo game, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't looked into it, but I would probably expect it to be a game like that. This is going to be a heck of a matchup. We just have to see, and it goes back to the fact, how will Mason Rudolph stack up? And can he continue to progress, or is the regression going to be way too much? Jesse George says DeCastro and Pouncey will double Aaron Donald, and he won't even get one sack. Gosh, Jesse, I would love that. That would be great. Those guys, as far as, you know what, there's been a lot of things said about the Steeler offensive line this year, regressing, not playing as well. I've said it too, but I've never said it in the pass rush. This is a very good pass rushing game. The game is on Fox. William Coonrod tells me that, so it would not be a Tony Romo game. But yes, this is a very fine team pass protecting. Where they're having trouble is against the run. I think you get James Conner back, he does so much better against the run. So that's what I'm saying as far as this game goes. Like I said, I don't want to give up too much with this game because we'll do that more on the preview. But this is your pivotal contest. The Colts game was pivotal to get to this point. Now this is even more crucial. So this is huge. Jaron Dale says Watt and Dupree, and oh yeah, how much are you loving right now, Bud Dupree? We know you're loving Watt, but now there's a big sentiment that let's bring him back. And I know someone's going to throw in $9 million is way too much for that player. I don't think so, for the production and for everything that he's been doing this year. So like I said, I can't wait till this game. We did lose Tony. I have not seen him pop back up. If he does pop back up, we'll go ahead and grab him. But so let's go ahead and take some questions. We'll throw out some questions there and see where it goes. But before we do that, I'll just go ahead and mention that, the title of the show was What Path Do They Need to Go Down? Sure. And somebody brought it up earlier that you still got to go for the division title. And then, trust me, they are not giving up. They're going for the division title. But the path for them is probably a whole lot easier going for a wild card at this point as well. So there you go. Will we see more Wildcat versus the Rams? That's asked by Jaron Dale. You know what? I don't know. We haven't seen a whole heck of a lot. But that's something that they might want to dust off again in certain spots, but not in crazy spots. Here's a question. This is Javman. Why do you think our run game went dormant against Indianapolis? I'm thinking two things. I did not love the predictability of the play calling yesterday. Run, pass that we saw a lot of. But what I did notice was the fact that Samuels was so much more dangerous in a screen pass in a screen roll, and James Conner is going to be so much more dangerous as a runner. The timing is more there with Conner. I know Samuels came in last year and ran pretty well. Edmonds ran very well yesterday too, but you got to think though, in his 70 some yards, one of them was a 45-yard run. So have to go ahead and take a look at that. Thomas White, let's go ahead and bring him up. What development does Mason Rudolph need to go through to be Ben Roethlisberger year 2? You know what's funny about that is Mason Rudolph is not Ben Roethlisberger. I don't know if he ever will be, but to make that kind of jump, he needs to keep on going through his progressions, keeping on. This guy, no one works harder than this guy. We'll tell you that. That's what the team has said a whole heck of a lot of. So no one really does. No one's going to outwork him, and he's going to continue to work. So he needs to just keep going through, getting better. He might never be Ben Roethlisberger, and that's okay. But he can be a very solid quarterback, and that's what you're looking out from this guy. Darren Dalton, unsatisfying win versus the Colts. We got to win by outplaying teams, not by luck. Yeah, I mean it's that's a thing. And they're not getting any luck whatsoever. I mean, excuse me, let me rephrase that. They're getting a lot of luck right now. You cannot expect that to keep happening over and over and over again. So we're hoping that they can keep going with it. Let's see. If Mike Scott brings up the fact, if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? Yes, it does. Because if you have supersonic hearing, then you're going to go ahead and hear it. Wes, is there any sort of explanation you could provide for Burns playing on the field, albeit only one play instead of Sutton? You know what? His reserve spot and where he's practicing, and he is the next man up. They're using Sutton more in that nickel role as well. Let's see. Why on earth can't we involve the tight end of the game plan outside of the Vance TD? I would love to see more of that, Jav, man. Because think of it. We've got Vance McDonald. We've got Nick Vannett. So we've got two Vanimals out there, and they're talented. So let's go ahead and use them more. Is there any point to challenge pass interference at this point? Jaron Dale says, gosh, Jaron, that is a great question. And I'm going to tell you this. There's no reason to at this point. They're not going after yesterday. That was the craziest pass interference call I've seen. Probably not the worst, but it ranks up there. That was so uncatchable. And if they could not see that in New York, I don't know what they're looking at this point. They don't want to go ahead. They don't want to overturn it because it's almost like, hey, we got to protect our guys here, and we just aren't going to call them. So let's see how we're doing with Tony. How are you, buddy?
I'm incredibly frustrated right now, and I want to throw a red challenge flag like Mike Tomlin did yesterday out of anger. I do. Did somebody push off? Because I'm going to throw a flag. I don't care if it gets overturned or not.
Well, here you go, Tony. Here's the thing, though. You've come back and you're a lot quicker, so it seems like you've got things resolved. So, hey, I throughout the summer, I had so much problems with it. Steelers fan frenzy with Flip. Say that 5 times fast. Mm-hmm. Have we won games because of Rudy? Have we won games in spite of Rudy? Tony, go ahead, grab that. I think we've won some because of him, and I think some he was just there.
Yeah, but I mean, I think what you want from him is at this point in his career, you don't want him to be an epic failure as a quarterback, and he hasn't been that. He's been a game manager, and hopefully from here we can see improvement from him. Have they won some games because of him? I think you could maybe point to the Bengals game for sure. I think he looked really good in that game, and I think he looked decent last week against he was more aggressive. Yesterday, it was more of a case of him just being there. But I think you could say the same thing about the receivers, the running backs, the offensive line. It wasn't a great performance by the offense yesterday.
No, it wasn't, but they still found a way to do it. Gyro, I love this question. In fact, I was just looking up their schedule, and our producer back at the home office, Dave, brought it up for us. I appreciate that. Do you think the Steelers can still win the division? If they win the rest of their games and Baltimore loses one before week 17, and if the Steelers beat the Ravens, then they can sneak in. You know, we did this exercise, and we're not going to do it again, but just giving you the schedule. Ravens at Bengals, Texans at Ravens. They travel on a Monday night at the end of November to go ahead and play the Rams. They have the 49ers coming to town. They play the Bills. They have the Jets. And remember, Le'Veon Bell loves to run against the Ravens. They have the Browns, and they at Cleveland, and then they end in Pittsburgh. Not a lot of losses I see in there, but it's possible. I mean, just like it was put out there, you know. I mean, yeah, if the Ravens win out and just lose one game, and it's possible. I mean, I don't expect them to go ahead through, but and win them all. But yeah, I think the Steelers. I don't expect the Steelers to win out though either. I don't think they're a win out team. But I think 6-2 could happen.
I think they can definitely stay in the mix for a wild card at the very least. You're only a game back now. They're the number 7 seed in the AFC, and who would have thought that a month ago? So I mean, they've already dug themselves out of a pretty big hole. So you know, I think we can they win the division? You know, a lot's gonna have to happen. I mean, I didn't think that the Ravens would win these last 2 games, and they not only won them, but they look dominant. You know, they look like a strong AFC contender. So, you know, you talk about the Texans and the Rams and teams and 49ers. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they perform well against. They have it going on right now. They have a great formula. You know, they're great on. They're efficient on offense. They're opportunistic on defense, and they're always great on special teams. So it's going to be tough. But I'm just excited for the fact that the Steelers have dug themselves out of this hole, and that we can start talking about these things realistically, like division titles and wild card spots.
Piggybacking off of the challenge question, ask Wes, do you think that the PI reviews are being handled the way they are on purpose to get rid of the ability to review them altogether? Yes, I actually do, Tony.
Yeah, like I wrote about, I think they're so afraid of undermining the judgment of the officials, and I think this was a way to appease the Saints fans and some other fans that wanted this implemented in the offseason. But I think they're kind of arrogant and saying, well, look, you're not going to question our judgment. Sorry, but our judgment is above reproach, and we're going to keep upholding these calls on the field until you decide to take this role away. That's what I think is going on.
Well, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And you know what? You just, I mean, it's obvious. I don't know who is going to go ahead and turn those around. And I love when you go ahead and bring the former official, the former director of officiating in, and they're like, oh yeah, they should overturn this. Yeah. And then next thing you know, boom, they don't. And they're like, I don't get it either. So it's crazy. Jared Dale asked, are we lining up Juju in the wrong wide receiver position? I don't think so. I think Juju is going to go ahead and get attention right now for being Juju. Yesterday was one of his weakest outputs, but I just think, and somebody mentioned it on the live chat earlier, that if our Hall of Fame quarterback's there, you see a completely different Juju right now. There's a lot of things going on there because you could double him a whole lot more. I still think he's a wide receiver number 1, but there's a lot of things going against him at this point, Tony.
Yeah, but I think last week they did move him to the slot, and he did have a he did have a really good game. I think people forget that Hines Ward was the number one as far as production, but he played a lot in the slot. Same with Antonio Brown. He played a lot in the slot despite being their best receiver. So I think it's up to the coaches right now to try to get him in the best position to be the guy. And if that's in the slot, then that's where he has to be. But at the same time, you need James Washington and Deontay Johnson to keep evolving. And I like what Washington did yesterday, but I think if I'm the coaches, I think you try more of Juju in the slot starting next week. That's just my opinion.
Can 10-6 get us in the playoffs? As we looked earlier with the Colts and with the not the Texans, but who else were the Bills? Yeah, 10-6 could definitely get you in, especially if you beat the Bills head to head. You're looking at right now beating the Colts head to head. You've already done it, so yeah, I think that's a possibility. I think 9-7 could get you in maybe a 6 seed if you're lucky, but teams are going to go down, and we talked about those schedules. So yes, Thomas White throws in $5 in the tip jar, and we really appreciate this. 66% for Mason Rudolph in 2019, 1,088 yards, 217 yards per game, 10 TDs, 4 interceptions. Ben Roethlisberger, 2005, 63%, 2,385 yards, 150 a game, 17 TDs, 9 interceptions. Mason is already better. And if that is correct, that 2005 is his second year. So there was a question earlier is how could Mason make that jump from year 1 to year 2, and if that's Ben's year 2, then that's pretty solid. But if that's his 2004 numbers, pretty much the same. He should probably eclipse those numbers with probably not as many. Hey, Bryan and Tony, not as many games, excuse me. Hey, Bryan and Tony, what do we have to do on defense to cover a good tight end? I thought they covered Jack Doyle pretty well yesterday. Now, like I said, Minkah Fitzpatrick was not perfect. As much love as he's getting for that 96-yard game-saving play, and that's really what it was. He wasn't perfect. But they're covering the tight end a heck of a lot better as of late. I'd like to see them right now up against a Travis Kelce, up against a Zach Ertz, which we won't see that unless something happens in the postseason with either one of those guys. Let's go ahead and do we need another proven running back if there's one available for depth? Gosh, I don't know, Tony. What do you think? Because I liked Edmonds yesterday in that role, and you definitely like what a guy like Samuels and Benny Snell's going to go ahead and do as far as catching the ball. So, what do you think?
Some of the names out there, you always hear about guys like C.J. Anderson, and he was signed by the Rams last year and had a good finish to the season. He helped them out a lot, but is a guy like that going to want to come in here and be a number 4, on the depth chart? I don't think so. So they just need to get if they can get Connor healthy sooner rather than later, then you have a pretty good stable of backs with with Benny Snell if he gets healthy and comes back soon. So you're 4 deep right now. Do they need to sign another one? I don't think so. I don't think they need to sign another one. They just need to get Connor healthy.
Panthers signed Dante Moncrief. Mike Scott sends that one in. Yeah, you know what? Here's the best part about it. With Dante Moncrief, you don't have to pay him for the rest of the year. He was your highest priced wide receiver. You do get that 3rd-round pick back. I know it has been said that the Steelers did him dirty. I don't think, I really don't think they have. He had 5 drops, 4 catches, 18 yards. And that was the entire season. We talk about the horrible game that Juju had yesterday. Juju had 16 yards. So
Well, and there's your problem with the receivers. I mean, we talked a lot off season. We were pretty optimistic about Dante Moncrief coming in and being a really valuable veteran and helping Juju out and helping the receiving core out, and he was an abject failure. So, I mean, they had no choice but to cut him and get the number in the third round pick. And I'm glad the Panthers are paying him.
Yeah, that too. Now, Darren, try saying toy boat 3 times fast for $2. I'll say it 6 times. Toy boat, toy boat, toy boat, toy boat, toy boat, toy boat, toy boat. Actually, that's a lot harder than you would think.
Toy boat. I don't even want to try it.
Toy boat, toy boat, toy boat.
Toy boat, toy boat. I did it twice.
That's fun. So we'll go ahead and take about 5 more questions before we wrap everything up. So let's see what we have going on here. Jesse George says we need a 6th wide receiver.
Can I say?
Go ahead, jump in.
I think they need a 4th and a 5th. I really do. They're only 3 deep. Switzer and Holton are giving you nothing.
Yeah, they have 3 wide receivers right now, so they definitely need to be doing something there. I would probably think that they will address it next year, but right now I don't think you're seeing it at this point. Snowman, can we ever stop the run? That makes me think of Creedence Clearwater Revival. Can you ever stop the run? There you go. I want to know, can we ever stop the run? Okay, Snowman, for asking that question, you have to listen to me sing. So, yeah, you know what? They've done it.
They did a pretty good job yesterday.
And guess what? I'm bragging about my 26-24 prediction. I made another prediction this week that they would hold Marlon Mack to 90 yards rushing. They held him to 89, so I missed by 1. But Marlon Mack is one of the best running backs in the game right now. Look what they did against the Ravens. I mean, they gave up a lot of rushing yards, but that was their lowest output on the ground in the season, I believe. Javman says, Tomlin mentioned wanting to start faster in his press conference again. Isn't that on him? I thought they were starting out fast. I really thought they did. They came out quick. They were moving the ball with those passes. The running game really wasn't moving, but that 17-yarder to Jalen Samuels, those passes out over the middle, then that third down pass to Juju Smith-Schuster that was an interception. That wasn't in the cards because Juju really should have had that ball. So yeah. I don't know.
Well, I mean, they're missing so much on offense. It's going to be kind of hard for them to start off fast week in and week out. So I mean, you can say you want to start fast, but I mean, you have an inexperienced quarterback and you have some inexperienced receivers and running backs. So it's going to be hard to start fast.
But the design was good on that first drive. I'm complaining about the design down the line, especially late in the game. I hated. I didn't love the game plan yesterday, but to start off, it wasn't bad. Thomas White, what a great question. How much does Bud earn in 2020? 10 to 12 million a year? Gosh, I don't know, man. Probably. Yeah, it might be north of there too. He's having a very good season. Someone is going to throw money at him. I don't know if it's going to be in Pittsburgh. In fact, I don't think no matter what season he has that he'll be a Steeler next year. And the reason I don't think that, I think they should re-sign him. I think they should find the money for this guy because he's really got it together. But the bottom line to the whole thing, Tony, is, if he has a horrible year, he's gone. Because they didn't offer him the extension. If he has a fantastic year, that's an edge rusher that has the stats to go with it. So, and really, he's not Jarvis Jones either. Yeah, he's had a lot more sacks than Jarvis Jones, and he's really getting it together. So, you can't put Bud and Jarvis in the same category. I don't think Bud's a Steeler next year. I hope he's a Steeler next year. And some people are saying he makes about $15 million. I would probably put it around 12 to, and Jesse George says 13 would be his ceiling. So probably around there, but it's going to be tough.
And if you pay him that much, I mean, you're going to have to pay TJ Watt too. There you go. TJ Watt, he's going to be in his 4th year. He's going to be prime for an extension next year. So how much do you pay TJ Watt? He's your best defender right now. So what do you do with him if you're going to pay Bud $12-15 million? Are they going to be willing to pay 2 of those guys that kind of money? I don't know.
Probably to answer this question that's up here, should TJ Watt be Defensive Player of the Year? I would probably say top 5. Probably not getting it. I mean, I think Nick Bosa might even though he's a rookie, I think he might be getting some looks for DPOY. TJ Watt is playing at an all-pro level. I'm not just saying Pro Bowl, all-pro level. He is the Steelers MVP this year. I will probably tell you that right now, that he'll go ahead and win that award. So with that being said, Tony, let's go ahead and wrap this puppy up. It was not a great win. It was not a pretty win. It was kind of like my prom date in 1988. And if you're listening, I apologize, but at least I got to dance, right? Not pretty, but I got to dance. So there you go. Tony, final thoughts.
Well, I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were talking about this team being a 6-win, having a 6-win season, and now we're talking about can they win a division, and and it's like a realistic goal, and it's definitely a realistic goal for them to stay in the playoff race. So, I mean, I love the resiliency of this team. They're playing like a team, and I can't wait for the Rams game.
I can't wait either. And a question was asked earlier, who's going to be there? I know Dave Schofield is looking at being up that way. But I want you to start thinking about December 15th, my friends, because December 15th, a few of us from BTSC, Dave, myself, Tony might show up.
Oh, I'll be there.
And we're looking for places to hang out. So the Bills game is the game that we'll be there. We might be floating around, glad handing and begging for food at your tailgate. So that's the thing. But as Thomas White says, click the like. Look, I do appreciate and thank you for anybody that put money in on the tip jar. That helps us go a long way. But like Jeff Hartman always says, if you want to show appreciation to us, just subscribe. We're close to 5,000 subscribers. That's the best appreciation we can get. That's bragging rights, and that keeps us going just as well. So I say this every week, Tony, but I can't do this show. You can't do this show without you guys. And we love our Steeler, our BTSC family here. You guys are the best. And I cherish you guys. And Nap 1963 is having us at his tailgate. And Nap's a Johnstown boy like me. So I'll be wearing my Richland red and blue. How about that? Well, I can't because it's Buffalo's colors. So let's just say a let's go Rams. Not the Los Angeles Rams, though. Richland Rams. I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'll just shut up. But with that being said, yeah, we want to hang out with all of you. We're going to figure out a game plan. Hey, start thinking. Start thinking of ways to show up and show our BTSC pride. We'll see you then. For Tony Defeo, for Dave Schofield, back at home, helping us out with putting up everything up on the screen, producing. My name is Bryan Anthony Davis. We love ya. And my friends, once again, you just got hung over. Good night.